And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
And if we're talking tight ends and we're going into round 2, maybe round 3, give me Ian Thomas, please. Let's just do the damn thing.
Just based on giving his overall ability. Again, I like his arm. I think he can make every throw.
The pick at number 12 is in.
Welcome to Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I am Russell Brown. Joining me, as always, CP Christian Page. CP, my man, one day ago we were talking football. Today we do it again. How we doing, man?
It's just another day of talking football, the greatest sport on earth. So I'm doing just fine.
Yes, it is wonderful. We are another day closer. We've got Thursday Night Football on tonight. Any rookies in this game that you're interested in seeing at all? Maybe Brian Burns. I'm kind of intrigued to see what he does against that terrible Tampa Bay offensive line. Definitely intrigued there. Is there anybody on the Tampa Bay side? I can't even remember who they drafted, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if anybody really added the significant impact. I mean, just from, I guess, just a player perspective, I'm interested just to kind of see the involvement of Chris Godwin. You know, he's kind of that sexy fantasy flex guy, but
yeah,
I've seen the implementation of him. Mike Evans had a cold or sick or something last week where he was very limited. So I'm just interested overall in just seeing, Bruce Arians and can Jameis Winston really improve? I know I'm dodging the question of the rookies, but just a rookie from last year, Ronald Jones, seeing how he evolves.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's a lot more people warming up to the idea of him improving. It's kind of maybe an unfair expectation that a rookie running back comes in and takes the league by storm. I mean, of recent memory, it happens quite often. Jordan Howard, Zeke Elliott, Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, whoever it may be, they've taken the league by storm. But with Ronald Jones, maybe it's just going to take him a little bit, kind of coming behind Peyton Barber. And maybe if he can show him the ropes, then Ronald Jones can take over. So I don't know. I'm just interested in Tampa Bay as a whole. I think Carolina's window of success is closing. I think that it's only like an inch open right now because I just don't think the longevity of Cam Newton's there. But Christian McCaffrey, he's one of the best players in the NFL regardless of position.
Yeah, so they had – wow, we are idiots. Tampa Bay had Devin White.
Oh, yeah. There's one.
Geez. They went defensive heavy. That's right. Sean Bunting, Jamel Dean, Mike Edwards, Terry Beckner from Missouri, Anthony Nelson. So they've got some players, and it's all defense. So that'll be fun. I was going to mention Ronald Jones. I'm glad you did. It's just like, when is he going to emerge for this team, whether it is as a featured back or what kind of role is he eventually going to have? Hopefully that starts happening this year. And if it doesn't happen, then it kind of makes me scratch my head and say, hey, we all missed the mark on that one, because I think most people on Twitter and just most people in the draft community felt like he was going to be a good selection for Tampa Bay, and he just has not panned out to be exactly that. So we'll see what happens. I'm definitely intrigued with Devin White. Totally forgot that he even went there. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. But let's jump into college football and the 2020 NFL Draft like we always do. We were looking at the slate of games for Week 3. Not the best. We will certainly pick a bunch of games for college football. I hope you have our records. I don't know if you remember exactly who we picked or if you kept track on that. But if you didn't, no big deal. We can always go back and listen to it another time. But the Week 3 slate of games, I mean, I know the big one is Alabama, South Carolina, Arizona State, Michigan State. Those are probably the two best games in my opinion. But we are both going to pick two guys each from these slates from Week 3, and somebody that we are kind of looking forward to watching for the 2020 NFL Draft. I don't know if you have your guys set aside yet. I can certainly go first, though, with this one, because this game is on Friday. So depending on when you listen to this podcast, we are recording on a Thursday night. Thursday Night Football is kicking off in about 10 or 15 minutes. But Friday night, we've got North Carolina at Wake Forest. And Wake Forest has got a linebacker that is starting to really catch some draft buzz, from the NFLPA Bowl to the Senior Bowl. And that's, I'm going to butcher the name, but it's Justin Strnad, linebacker for Wake Forest. He's 6'3", 235. This guy is a high motor type of player. So if you're watching the game on Friday night, it's linebacker number 23 for Wake Forest. He's already got 19 tackles through 2 weeks on the year. He's got an interception. Last year, he had 105 tackles. 65 of them were solo. 40 of them were assisted. And then the year before that, he actually had 3 interceptions. If I remember correctly, he's actually a former safety that moved to linebacker, and I think it's panning out for him. So hopefully he's a player that really steps up against North Carolina, which I think is possible. They run the ball a ton, so he should be very active on Friday night. He's certainly a player to pay attention to. What's a guy that you have listed for either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, if there's any games on Sunday? I doubt it, though.
Yeah, you mentioned South Carolina, Alabama, and I kind of teased it yesterday talking about Bryan Edwards, and I think this is a game where he could really catch some big-time draft buzz. He has a little bit there, but he kind of started slow out of the gate. 1 catch, 7 yards versus North Carolina. Picked the pace up back against Charleston Southern. With South Carolina scored 72 points. I don't care who you're playing. That's a lot of points, especially for a team that's not known for their offensive identity. So he had 5 catches, 112 yards, and a couple touchdowns there. So against Alabama, I would think he goes against Trayvon Diggs, kind of that outside corner, very physical, very long. Bryan Edwards likes to win with his physicality. Not a super elusive guy, so I just think it would be a fun, physical, man-on-man matchup. But he may also get Patrick Surtain. That kind of serves a little bit as that chess piece in that Alabama secondary. He's a true sophomore. He's not draft eligible. But next year at this time, we'll definitely be talking about him. But Bryan Edwards, number 89 for South Carolina, they like to focus in on him. But maybe if he's getting too much attention, maybe some other receiver steps up for South Carolina. By no means do I think South Carolina has a chance in this game, but I think Bryan Edwards could be the bright spot out of this game because, I don't know what the spread is. I think it's 25, 26 points, and Alabama probably definitely covers that. But I think Edwards, just based on his ability and potential, this is a big game that I think a lot of scouts and evaluators, ourselves included, will come back and circle depending on his performance.
Yeah, Bryan Edwards is going to be one of those forgotten guys, I think, in the draft world with the receivers, just because there's so many in this draft right now. And I'm going to mention one right now. My second guy that I'm paying attention to for the weekend, Iowa is playing Iowa State. And I think Iowa's probably going to run the ball effectively. I think it could be a lot closer. It's a 2-point spread right now. So obviously Vegas is expecting this to be a relatively close game. Iowa won last week 30-0. I could see Iowa winning this game like 24-7 or something. I don't think Iowa State is terrific or anything like that. I kind of question what they can do offensively because you lost David Montgomery, you lost Akeem Butler, but they do have a replacement right now in the wide receiver room, and that's Deshaunte Jones, wide receiver number 8. He's a senior, listed at 5'10", 180. He's already got 14 receptions for 126 on the year, and he's actually been secretly productive for the Cyclones over the last 3 seasons. He's had 10 touchdowns over the last 3 years. Last year, he had 43 receptions, and then his freshman year, he actually had 37 receptions for 536 as far as yards. He was averaging almost 15 yards per reception, and he did have 6 touchdowns. So he was very productive his first year for Iowa State. I'm looking around that wide receiver room, and I don't see anybody that can really stand out and be as productive as him. So I think he could be in line for a big game in a rivalry situation against Iowa. I think he could remind some people of like a Chris Godwin in a way, as you mentioned him earlier. So I'm intrigued by him. I really liked what I saw over the weekend. I watched a little bit of him. I just kind of came across him when I was watching some All-22, and I was like, hey, this guy's actually pretty talented. And I dove a little bit deeper, and I was very pleased with what I saw. So those are my 2 guys. Do you have anybody else that you're looking at for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm just interested in this Florida State-Virginia matchup, and we're going to talk about it when we take our spread picks. But Bryce Hall, cornerback for Virginia, just seeing how he matches up against the talented Florida State offense. I know James Blackman's dealt with a lot of turnovers But I think this will be another test, similar to talking Bryan Edwards against Alabama, even though Florida State is definitely on the lowest of the totem pole in the ACC, in my opinion. They're not where they're supposed to be. I still think this is a match just based on talent alone. See what Bryce Hall is made of. His long speed's going to be tested. I think that's his biggest question mark. I think he's pretty fluid for the most part. His turn and run is okay, and he's very physical at the point of attack. So I think if Florida State can test him downfield and Hall gets the better or the longer end of the stick, I think Hall will definitely check those boxes, because I think right now he's probably a consensus borderline first-round player. A lot of people have him in, their top 3, top 5 cornerback rankings. So I think he could probably just solidify that, at least for the first half of the season, with a good performance. And then Cam Akers is another player that it seems like ever since he stepped on Florida State's football field that there was just tons of hype, but the offensive line never got it together. He's proving himself now. He had just under 200 yards last week. It was against Louisiana Monroe, but in years past they played teams like that, and he couldn't get going because the offensive line couldn't win that line of scrimmage battle. So there is a little more relief for the running game for Florida State. So it's good to see Cam Akers get acclimated. But definitely, even though this game isn't necessarily a marquee matchup, still think there's some players from both teams to keep an eye on for the Florida State and Virginia game.
For sure. I'm not the biggest fan of Cam Akers, but again, like you mentioned.
I'm not either, but it's good to see him kind of get his feet underneath him, no pun intended, and kind of get the ball rolling because there's just been a lot of hype for him coming in. I think former 5-star, one of the top recruits coming in his respected recruiting year. So it's kind of good to see him at least get going and now actually be a legit NFL draft prospect.
Yeah, no, for sure. But let's move to the picks. Let's get into this and wrap this up. I don't know if anybody competed against us. I've not checked the comments, but do you have our records from last week by chance, or no?
I don't. I didn't write yours down. I have mine. But
what'd you go?
I feel like for the most part we were pretty successful. I know one that stood out. You did, I believe, take Maryland, which was unbelievable. We talked about that game on last night's podcast, and we both did take BYU to beat Tennessee on the road. Those are really the only two. I feel like we agreed on a lot of them, so we'll have to go back and listen. I'll get the record squared away. But for the most part, I think we were pretty reliable based on picking against the spread. And we also did pick Army against the spread, and we talked about it yesterday. Army gave that game away because Michigan's just not a good football team. But anyways, we'll get into Week 3's picks. Kansas State 2-0, traveling to Starkville to take on Mississippi State, who's also 2-0. Mississippi State is a 7.5-point favorite. Neither team has really caught the woods on fire, but they're always kind of those tough-nosed teams or hard-nosed teams. Mississippi State, I've been to Stark Vegas before. It is a rocking environment. It's something different that maybe Kansas State's not accustomed to. But I'm going to take Kansas State. It's just always, whether Bill Snyder's there or whoever's there, they always play a close game no matter what the atmosphere is. I still think Mississippi State wins this game by maybe 3 or 4 or 5 points. But I think Kansas State is going to cover the 7.5-point spread.
Yes, 7.5 points, no way. Give me Kansas State. If you do want to go to this game, tickets are as low as $2 right now on StubHub.
Whoa.
So $2. You know what? Like, that is insane to me. I'm going to go with Kansas State just because that spread at 7.5. I don't see Mississippi State winning by more than 7 points. So that half point just kind of does it for me. So I'll go Kansas State.
And the next game we talked about a little bit yesterday, Stanford traveling to Orlando to UCF, ranked number 17. UCF is a 7.5-point favorite. I'm proud that UCF actually scheduled a reputable out-of-conference opponent, so we don't have to have the conversation of who did they play outside of the conference. But, of course, Stanford may not be as good as they normally are. KJ Costello, I think, is still questionable, but maybe linked more to probable now. So I may just pick Stanford straight up to win this football game. So I'm going to take Stanford to 7.5 points.
Give me UCF on this one. I'm gonna roll with them. If they prove me wrong, then I will never forgive them. I don't believe they are national champions from that 2 years ago. But as far as Costello goes, he is back. He will play on Saturday. And Walker Little is actually out for the year. So give me UCF. What is the spread? 7.5?
7.5.
And they're the favorites. I could see them winning by as weird as that sounds, I could see them winning. With Stanford's loss last week against USC, with or without Costello, that worries me. So give me UCF.
All right, the next game hits close to home for you. Arizona State, Michigan State, both 2-0 teams. Michigan State, a 14-point favorite. You said to this morning it moved to 15, so we can move it to 15 there. But Michigan State, dominating defense. The offense a little questionable, but it seems like they picked up the pace a little bit last week. Still, though, Michigan State, it seems like they always play to the level of their opponent. Mm-hmm. Not saying Arizona State's a bad football team, but I think they have the talent to at least kind of, hang in there for maybe 3.5 quarters, make Michigan State, get a key first down here at the end of the game. So I'm going to take Arizona State just based on the spread. But ultimately, I do think Michigan State takes home the victory.
Yes, I agree. That spread's way too far. I know they put a whooping on Western Michigan, but there's no way. We talked about it on last night's podcast. I really like Benjamin for Arizona State. I think he can be effective against this defensive front. It will be tough. It will probably be his toughest matchup of the year for Benjamin. He might only get 50 yards on 20 carries, but I think they can be effective enough through the air to put some points up on the board. And whether it's 21 to 10 or 21 to 14, either way, it doesn't really matter. I don't think Michigan State at 15 points, 14 points. I think that's just too far. I do think Michigan State will win. Kenny Willekes, Raekwon Williams, Joe Bocci, Josiah Scott, Antoine Simmons. There's a ton of players on their defense to pay attention to. So definitely, and then, of course, Brian Lewerke on the offensive side, and then Cody White. They do look like they've got their running back in Elijah Collins, so we'll see what happens. Maybe they do win, 28-7 or something, but I would be shocked. I think it'll be a lot closer. So give me Arizona State with those points.
The next game I'll run through real quickly because we both touched on it. Iowa, a 2.5-point favorite over Iowa State. You said Iowa, you think they'll win at least by a touchdown or so. Am I correct by that?
Yeah, no, I just don't see Iowa State. I could see them keeping it close, but no way by 2. There's no way somebody's winning by less than 2 or more than 2 points. What am I saying? Less than 2 points? Either way, Iowa's winning.
Yeah, and Iowa State, they played, I guess, the first week, had the off week last week or something like that. But in they're only 1-0, and then that one win came against Northern Iowa, which I think went into 3 or 4 overtime. So Iowa State, even though that seems like they're accustomed to doing that and turning it around, I definitely think Iowa's in the better position going forward. I think they have the best bookend tackles from a unit perspective in college football. Going to the SEC, number 9 Florida travels to Lexington, Kentucky. Florida is an 8-point favorite. Both teams are 2-0. I know Kentucky finally beat Florida for the first time in 35 years last year. Dan Mullins, I think, second game of the season in the same spot as they were last year. But I just think this Florida team's way too good, especially that defensive front. Kaiir Campbell, the nose tackle, I think is a stud. He's not this productive freak that you're going to see, but he's a nose tackle. He does what he's supposed to do, does all the dirty work, opens a lot for Jabari Zuniga on the outside, who is just turning into this just crush for everybody as far as NFL draft goes. One of the purest pass rushers, I think, now. So he's just evolving. It's just really nice to see week by week somebody improve. Kind of that Josh Allen effect of Kentucky. Last year you saw him carry over what he needed to work on from 2017 and make the adjustments in 2018 to become a top 10 pick. I think you're seeing Jabari Zuniga kind of take on that same mold. We knew what his potential was and what he had to work on. It seems like he's putting that all together to become a very fine pass rusher. Just a couple guys in this game, but I think Florida covers the 8 points. I think they win pretty big.
There's a running back for Kentucky. His last name is Smoke, and CP, you don't want that smoke. No, man, this is a tough one. What's the spread? 8? 8. Oh, my God. Am I going to talk myself into taking Kentucky on this? Because I don't trust Felipe Franks. Oh, my God. No. Give me Kentucky. That spread's just too big for me. That's tough. I could see it being like 24-21 or something, just like it was against Miami, Florida. So I'm going to roll with that. Let's go Wildcats.
There we go. We need to disagree every now and then.
I do think Florida's going to win, but I just think that spread's a little too big.
Yeah, in the next game, TCU traveling to Purdue. TCU, a 2.5-point favorite on the road. Purdue, kind of that team that lost some personnel pieces last year. David Blouder at quarterback there. But they found kind of a rhythm. I mean, offensively, I think they're okay, but TCU's a tough-nosed team that I believe you picked to win the Big 12, so you can talk about that if you want to expound on it a little bit. But I think the two players to watch in this game, Jalen Reagor, one of our favorite wide receivers in college football for TCU, then Rondale Moore, the true sophomore from Purdue, a guy that we'll be talking about next year at this time. Really just a dynamic receiver. He's going to get double-digit catches a game. He's going to get 15 to 16 targets a game. Really your do-it-all weapon on offense. But I'm going to take TCU. I think 2.5. I think TCU, I don't say they run away with this, but I could see something like maybe a 10-point, 12-point road victory here.
Yeah, you got to go with TCU. They've got Garrett Wallow on defense. He's very productive. He's very rangy. Rondale Moore from Purdue certainly scares me, but they just lost Marcus Bailey. He's out for the year with a torn ACL. His career is probably done, just judging by everything. I mean, he's a senior unless he somehow gets a medical red shirt, but that could be unlikely. Either way, I think that's a big loss for their defense. I could see TCU winning by at least 7 in this game, so give me TCU.
In the next game, even though it may be a little surprising we're putting this on here just based on how Syracuse looked last week in their 63-20 loss to Maryland, but Clemson is a 27.5-point favorite at the Carrier Dome. I know this is a game that we kind of circled at the beginning of the year because we thought Syracuse had the coaching, they had the personnel to hang in there. But I put it on here because Clemson hasn't had really that sexy fashion kind of win so far this year. I know, Texas A&M is a strong opponent, but Clemson just even in that 14-point victory, they just didn't seem like they were clicking on all cylinders. We talked about Trevor Lawrence and maybe some of his struggles. Is it concerning going down the road? I'm still going to take Clemson in the points here. I think they figure it out. If you remember last year, this was a game that was definitely interesting. I think there was a couple injuries here. I think Trevor Lawrence actually got hurt in this game last year. So definitely there's maybe some revenge factor out there for Clemson. I still think they cover, but I don't think anybody should bat an eye, even though Syracuse lost by over 40 points last week to a Maryland team that's kind of finding themselves right now. I still think they have the personnel and coaching to hang with Clemson in the tough game.
Yeah, I'm going to take Syracuse. I think that spread's way too big. Nothing against Clemson. I think Syracuse bounces back. I don't think they lose by 40. I could certainly see them losing by, 2 scores or 17 or something like that. What was it, 27.5?
27.5.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I'm going to take Syracuse.
All right, in the next game we have, speaking of struggling ACC teams, Florida State at 1-1 with a bad loss. I would say a bad loss to Boise State, but just in the fashion that they lost and blowing a comfortable lead. And then last week, just squeaking by Louisiana Monroe in overtime, 45-44. They are traveling to now number 25 Virginia, and Virginia is a 7-point favorite. I think Virginia wins by a lot more than that. I just can't buy into this Florida State team. Offensively, they're not horrible, but they can't stop anybody at this point. They turn the ball over too much on offense. Talked about Cam Akers kind of, get in a rhythm of things, but he did have 36 carries last week. That's kind of inflated his 193 yards and a couple touchdowns. They also threw the ball 40 times. James Blackman only had 10 completions, but he also had 2 picks as part of those 10 incompletions. But I'm going to take Virginia. I just think they're too strong at this point for Florida State. So I'm going to take the Cavaliers by 7 or more.
I agree. I think Florida State is absolutely atrocious. I think Willie Taggart's done a terrible job there. I saw a picture this week on the timeline. One of their receivers were lined up backwards, so I don't know what's going on at Florida State, but it's atrocious. Give me Virginia. They're just so much better than Florida State.
The next game on the agenda here just got a lot more interesting based on what I guess I figured out yesterday when Washington lost to Cal in that rain delay game. Hawaii travels to Seattle to take on number 23 Washington. Washington's a 21-point favorite. Remember, Hawaii's 2-0 against other Pac-12 teams named Arizona and Oregon State. I wouldn't. I mean, I would be a little surprised if Hawaii actually won this game outright. But I just think Washington, even though they are at home, just based on the performance that they had last week, Jacob Eason needs to find himself. I think Cole McDonald in this Hawaii offense is really too strong to put in check. I still think Washington wins this game. They could still win by a couple touchdowns, but I think Hawaii right now, they're just too good to kind of be shut up in Seattle. So give me Hawaii in the points.
What's the spread?
21.
Give me Hawaii. Hawaii's going to win, and whether it's close or not does not matter. Cedric Byrd is too damn good. Washington, yeah, they've got Aaron Fuller, I know, but Jacob Eason, I think, kind of showed his true colors last week. I think it's going to show a little bit more here. Cole McDonald is superior to Jacob Eason. So, yes, give me Cole McDonald and Cedric Byrd and those Rainbow Warriors, please.
The last game on our list, and I believe the last game of that Saturday night of college football, Texas Tech 2-0 traveling to Arizona 1-1. That one loss being to Hawaii, who we just talked about. Texas Tech is a 3-point favorite on the road. Just remember, this is a 10:30 Eastern kickoff, if that factors into your pick just based on time of play. I still think Texas A&M wins this game outright. Arizona, I just can't get on board with them with Kevin Sumlin. There's just been nothing there that has intrigued me that they can be a successful football team. Sure, can they hang in there from a talent perspective? Even from a coaching perspective, I don't think Kevin Sumlin's a bad coach, but is he the right guy to get Arizona over the hump and contend in kind of an open Pac-12? So I just don't believe in Arizona going forward. So I'm going to take Texas Tech with the 3 points.
It's a tough one. I'm going to go Arizona. They're at home. I like J.J. Taylor a lot. Khalil Tate is shaky at times. There's times that he makes really dumb decisions. It's unlikely that I would go against T.J. Vasher, but I like J.J. Taylor a little bit more. Again, they're at home. Maybe the time messes this one up a little bit. But, again, I like Arizona. Their offense actually has put up more yardage than Texas Tech. However, their defense has been far worse. So this could be a high-scoring game. But Arizona, they've put up 630 points per game. Texas Tech is at 557. And Arizona has allowed 518 per game on the ground through the air combined. And Texas Tech has allowed a total of 210. So even though the numbers are pretty spread out, Texas Tech could very well win this game, but I like Arizona enough. I've convinced myself Arizona to win this one.
All right, so we have a couple of disagreements there. We both agreed on Kansas State covering against Mississippi State as a 7.5-point favorite. You took UCF. I took Stanford. UCF favored by 7.5. We both took Arizona State and the 15-point dog to Michigan State, though we both think Michigan State will win that game at home. We both took Iowa as a 2.5-point favorite over Iowa State. You took Kentucky. I took Florida. Florida a 8-point favorite on the road. But we both took TCU traveling to Purdue. TCU a 2.5-point favorite. I took Clemson as a 27.5-point favorite on the road versus Syracuse. You took Syracuse there. We both took Virginia hosting Florida State. Virginia favored by 7. We both took Hawaii as a 21-point dog traveling to Seattle to play Washington. And then you took Arizona as the 3-point dog to Texas Tech, that game being the last game of the college football Saturday and the last game on our Against the Spread picks.
Fantastic. I'm probably going to be wrong on all of my picks. So who really knows? But honestly, who really cares, right? It's for fun. If you guys want to compete against us on Spreaker.com or on iTunes, however you listen to the podcast, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review. But also feel free to comment on this episode and give us your picks every single week. Or you can also do what everybody else does. Just reach out to us on Twitter. So be sure you smash the follow button on Twitter at _Christian Page. That's Page. And then at Russ NFL Draft. CP, thanks for joining me on a Thursday night. We've got Thursday night football to watch right now, and then we've got week 3 college football and week 2 NFL football for the weekend. Do you have anything else for us, my man?
I think that's it. I mean, just make sure you're drinking something nice on a Saturday because there's not that much entertaining football to watch.
I will be at a wedding, so I will not be watching any of this non-entertaining football, even though I would much rather be watching the football, but that's okay. I will have alcoholic beverages in my hands, so it will be a lot of fun. CP, thanks for joining me as always, and as for everybody else, this is Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.